The cruel certainty in Brant's voice scraped against my skin like sandpaper as he cornered me by the coffee machine. His 6'2" frame blocked the exit, his cologne overpowering the coffee aroma as he leaned in, voice low but cutting. Isla, I wanted to give you a friendly heads up before tomorrow's meeting. His smile never touched his eyes. Don't get your hopes up about that executive promotion. A woman managing a $200,000 responsibility? The old boys won't have it. I gripped my mug tighter, scalding liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. The break room suddenly felt airless. Excuse me? I managed, hating how my voice sounded small. Look, you're good for a product developer, but executive suite? That's different territory. He patted my shoulder with patronizing familiarity. I just don't want you to be blindsided tomorrow. I've been groomed for this position for years. Heat crawled up my neck that had nothing to do with the steam from my coffee. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of sacrificed weekends and holidays, of brilliant solutions that saved failing projects, all dismissed in a 20-second conversation. Thanks for your concern, I said, forcing my voice steady. But I'll take my chances with the board's judgment. His laugh was soft, practiced. Of course, just looking out for you. As he walked away, he called over his shoulder, wear something nice tomorrow. At least you'll look good when they let you down easy. 24 hours later, I sat in the polished conference room, hyper-aware of every breath, every glance. I'd chosen a tailored navy suit, professional, uncompromising, despite Brant's suggestion to wear that cute red dress. The board members filed in, faces unreadable. Across the table, Brant radiated confidence in his custom suit, occasionally throwing glances my way as if I were already defeated. Each time our eyes met, his lips would quirk into that same condescending smile from yesterday. Chief Financial Officer Merrick arrived last, setting down a leather portfolio before taking his seat at the head of the table. The room hushed. Thank you all for coming, he began. As you know, we're here to finalize our decision for the new executive position. My pulse thrummed in my ears. 5 candidates had been shortlisted 3 months ago. Last week, it had narrowed to just Brant and me. Merrick reviewed the position requirements, speaking about strategic vision and leadership capacity. I focused on keeping my breathing even, my expression composed, while beside me, Brant nodded at key points as if agreeing with observations about himself. Both final candidates have impressive qualifications, Merrick continued. Brant has been with us for 7 years, showing consistent growth in our acquisition department. Ayla joined us 5 years ago and has demonstrated exceptional skill in product innovation before her recent transfer to regional development. Brant's transfer of me, his strategic play to prove my incompetence in an unfamiliar department, a move he hadn't expected to backfire so spectacularly. Before we conclude, Merrick said, there's one element of performance I'd like everyone to consider that wasn't previously discussed. He tapped his tablet, and the wall screen illuminated with a series of graphs I'd never seen before. The room fell completely silent. This represents client loyalty shifts over 12 months, separated by who managed each relationship. 2 lines traverse the screen, one blue, steadily climbing, one red, erratically declining. My name labeled the blue line. Brant's labeled the red. I glanced sideways. Brant's expression transformed instantly. His smugness vanished, replaced by visible shock, then panic as he scanned the data points. As you can see, Merrick continued, there's been a significant shift in client retention patterns since Isla took over the accounts previously managed by Brant. Brant cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, these metrics weren't part of the evaluation criteria. Client retention has always been our primary metric, Brant. Merrick cut in. The question is, why we're only seeing the true numbers now? The board members exchanged glances. Tension thickened the air. Merrick turned to me. Ayla, 3 months ago you were transferred to regional development after 5 years in product innovation. This wasn't your requested move, correct? That's correct, sir. Yet instead of failing, as some might have expected, you excelled. Can you explain how? Brant shifted beside me. I could feel his panic radiating like heat. When I joined regional development, I began carefully. I noticed several concerning patterns in our client communications. Messages went unanswered for days. Follow-ups were generic. Relationship management seemed focused on acquisition numbers rather than satisfaction metrics. I paused, aware of every eye on me. What they didn't know when I was transferred was my background before joining the company. 2 years in relationship development at my previous workplace, plus specialized training in my MBA program. I simply applied those principles here. Merrick nodded, expression thoughtful. And you implemented a new response protocol without official authorization. I did, sir. The situation seemed urgent enough to warrant immediate action. Another board member leaned forward. Yet, you never brought these concerns to leadership directly. I met her gaze steadily. I believed actions would speak louder than accusations. Brant's breathing had become audible. His right leg bounced beneath the table. Merrick turned the screen to a new slide, a client satisfaction comparison that made several board members inhale sharply. The decision for this position, Merrick said slowly, must reflect not just past performance but future potential. Leadership isn't just about impressive presentations. It's about measurable results and integrity. He looked directly at Brant. Would you care to explain these discrepancies in your reported acquisition success versus actual client retention? The moment hung suspended. Brant's face had gone pale. There must be some mistake in the data, he stammered. There's no mistake, Merrick replied. We've had an independent audit. He turned to the board. I believe we have all we need to make our decision. The vote was unanimous. As Merrick announced my promotion to Executive Director of Client Relations, with its accompanying $200,000 salary, Brant's face twisted into something ugly and unfamiliar. When the meeting adjourned, board members approached to congratulate me. Through the crowd, I caught Brant's eye as he slipped toward the door. His expression promised this wasn't over. I had no idea then how right that intuition would prove. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had someone try to sabotage your career, then you understand the burning in my chest that day. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about justice in a world where too often, talented women are pushed aside. If this resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories that expose workplace inequality. I promise, what happens next will show just how far some people will go when their privilege is threatened, and how sweet justice can be when it finally arrives. My name is Ayla Frost, and until 3 months ago, I led the product innovation team at Merrick Industries. At 34, I was the youngest team leader in company history, with a reputation for turning failing projects into successes. I'm methodical, detail-oriented, and I never make a move without considering all possible outcomes, a quality my chess champion father instilled in me from childhood. Growing up in a small Midwest town with my father, a mathematics professor, and my mother, a concert pianist, excellence wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. When other kids got ice cream for B+ grades, I got serious conversations about where I'd lost those few points. It wasn't cruel, it was preparation. The world will judge you twice as harshly, my mother would say, tucking my wild curls behind my ears. So you must be twice as good. I carried that lesson through college, through my MBA, through every professional step. I learned to work within systems while quietly changing them from the inside. I learned to smile through dismissive comments, to come prepared with twice the research, to speak with such authority that interruptions became awkward rather than expected. When I joined Merrick Industries, I quickly realized I'd entered a boys' club, where promotions often happened on golf courses and at whiskey tastings I wasn't invited to attend. Rather than fight the obvious, I decided to become indispensable. When projects faltered, I volunteered to fix them. When deadlines seemed impossible, I made them happen. I built a reputation not through networking but through results no one could deny. Brant Pierce had been watching my rise with increasing discomfort. He'd joined 2 years before me, moving quickly into acquisition management where his charisma and confidence made him a natural. He became known for his impressive presentations, his bold promises, his ability to command a room. What few people noticed was how rarely his grand predictions materialized into actual results. Our paths rarely crossed until the executive position opened. Suddenly, Brant seemed to appear wherever I was, offering unsolicited advice, questioning my methods in meetings, making small remarks that undermined my confidence. Then came the transfer. "Ayla, this is actually good news," Merrick had said, not meeting my eyes as he explained my move to regional development. "Brant suggested you need broader experience before executive consideration. The board agrees." I'd sat there, stunned into silence, as my 5 years of specialized expertise was dismissed as insufficient. Regional development wasn't just outside my wheelhouse. It was widely considered a punishment post where difficult employees were sent to either reform or resign. The team was underperforming, clients were unhappy, and leadership had largely abandoned hope for improvement. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the city lights, considering resignation. My phone buzzed with a text from Brant. "Heard the news. Tough break. Let me know if you need any pointers on client management." Something hardened inside me. I'd spent my life proving people wrong. This would be no different. My first day in regional development revealed the depth of the problem. The office atmosphere was defeatist. Team members arrived late, left early, and spent the intervening hours shifting blame. Client communications were buried in overflowing inboxes. Follow-up calls were scripted and rushed. "We used to have systems," explained Nev, a talented but demoralized team member. But when Brant managed this department, he dismantled them for his relationship-based approach. Then he got promoted, and we were left trying to maintain his impossible standards. I spent that first week observing, cataloging issues, reviewing client histories. A pattern emerged. Brant had reported record acquisition numbers, but retention was abysmal. Clients signed on, experienced poor service, and left, only to be replaced by new acquisitions that followed the same cycle. Meanwhile, in executive meetings, Brant showcased impressive-looking results about new client numbers. Leadership was captivated. I spotted inconsistencies but kept quiet, choosing instead to build stronger relationships with existing clients while implementing systematic improvements to our response protocols. When a significant client threatened to leave, mentioning they'd received no attention to their concerns for months, I intervened personally. Looking deeper into previous interactions, I discovered dozens of similar complaints across many relationships, all supposedly handled through Brant's groundbreaking approach that had earned him his promotion. Rather than exposing him immediately, I suggested collaboration. "Your acquisition approach seems remarkable." I told him over lunch one day, "Let me handle some of the day-to-day relationship maintenance while you concentrate on the bigger picture. We could make an impressive team." His ego couldn't resist. "That's actually quite insightful, Ayla. You focus on maintaining what I bring in. Smart division of labor." He eagerly accepted, not realizing I was now directly connecting with clients he'd neglected. I built ways to gauge actual satisfaction and loyalty, aspects nobody had properly measured before. The results were alarming, revealing a house of cards that had been carefully hidden beneath misleading statistics. As the executive promotion announcement drew closer, Brant intensified his efforts to undermine me. He'd challenge my ideas with questions designed to make me appear unprepared in meetings. He'd arrange competing priorities when I needed key decision-makers present. He began hinting to colleagues that I wasn't the right fit for executive expectations. Then came the coffee machine confrontation, his final attempt to shake my confidence before the board meeting that would decide our fates. What Brant didn't know was that I'd already spoken confidentially with Merrick the week before, presenting my findings not as accusations against Brant, but as opportunities for systemic improvement. I'd shown him the true client satisfaction metrics, the retention patterns, the discrepancies between reported acquisitions and actual revenue. I hadn't expected Merrick to use this information in the promotion meeting itself. I'd simply wanted the truth on record, regardless of the outcome. Now, walking back to my office with my new executive title, I struggled to process the dramatic reversal. Congratulatory emails were already flooding my inbox. My team waited with champagne and awkward hugs. Through it all, one thought kept circling. This wasn't over. Brant had built his career on the perception of success. I had just publicly shattered that perception. Men like Brant didn't accept defeat. They retaliated. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Enjoy your victory lap. It'll be brief." I stared at the screen. ice forming in my stomach. The champagne suddenly tasted sour. "Everything okay?" Neve asked, noticing my expression. I forced a smile, pocketing my phone. Perfect, just perfect. I had no idea then that the real battle was just beginning, that Brant's humiliation would fuel a vendetta I wasn't prepared for, or that my victory would prove far more dangerous than my defeat had ever been. The news of my promotion spread through the company with the speed of a digital wildfire. Emails flooded my inbox, most congratulatory, some surprised, a few suspiciously enthusiastic from people who'd never acknowledged me before. The executive suite welcomed me with professional cordiality, though I caught the occasional sidelong glance that suggested not everyone was thrilled with the board's decision. Brant, meanwhile, had disappeared. His office door remained closed for 3 days following the announcement. Rumors circulated. He was updating his resume. He was plotting a dramatic resignation. He was consulting with attorneys about age discrimination, though at 37, barely 3 years my senior, this seemed laughable. I focused on transition planning, determined to begin my executive tenure with clear objectives and measurable goals. Neve, who had quickly become my most trusted team member, helped me prepare a comprehensive briefing for my first executive committee meeting. "You know he'll try to sabotage you," she said as we worked late one evening. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving us alone with delivery food and spreadsheets. Brant doesn't lose gracefully. "I know," I admitted, "but what can he really do? The numbers speak for themselves." Nev's expression remained troubled. "Just watch your back. Brant has friends in unexpected places." I discovered how right she was the following Monday. Arriving early for the executive committee meeting, I found 2 board members, Hamilton and Weston, already seated, deep in conversation that abruptly halted when I entered. "Ayla," Hamilton acknowledged with a tight smile. "Settling in?" "Very well, thank you," I replied, arranging my materials at the table. "Ambitious first quarter projections," Weston remarked, glancing at my presentation notes. Perhaps unrealistically so. The comment stung. He hadn't even seen the full presentation yet. "They're based on current trajectory with moderate acceleration," I explained. "Actually conservative given our recent improvements." His skepticism hung in the air. "Well, we'll see, won't we?" As other executives filed in, the tension eased somewhat. Merrick arrived last, nodding encouragingly as I prepared to present. I'd just pulled up my first slide when the door opened again. Brant strode in, immaculately dressed, expression pleasant. "Sorry I'm late," he announced, taking the empty seat directly across from me. Traffic was brutal. The room went silent. Brant had no reason to attend this meeting. He wasn't part of the executive committee. Merrick frowned. "Brant, this is a closed meeting." "Oh, I know," Brant replied smoothly. "But given that Ayla will be presenting strategies built on the foundation of my work, I thought my insights might be valuable." He turned to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just here to support the team." Before Merrick could respond, Hamilton spoke up. "Actually, I invited him. Given the transition, having both perspectives seemed prudent." I felt a chill. Hamilton had bypassed Merrick's authority, clear signal of the alliance Neve had warned me about. Merrick's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. "Very well. Ayla, please proceed." For the next 30 minutes, I outlined my vision for client relationship management, including systematic improvements and retention strategies. Throughout, Brant nodded thoughtfully, occasionally jotting notes. His apparent cooperativeness was more unnerving than open hostility would have been. "Questions?" I concluded. "Just one," Brant said immediately. "These relationship protocols you're proposing, they seem remarkably similar to systems I implemented 3 years ago, before moving to a more dynamic approach. Are you essentially suggesting we revert to outdated methodologies?" The trap was beautifully laid. If I acknowledged the similarity, I'd appear unoriginal. If I denied it, I'd seem defensive or dishonest. "Good observation," I replied calmly. "There are fundamental similarities because certain relationship principles are timeless. The difference lies in implementation and accountability. My approach incorporates real-time feedback loops and transparent metrics that weren't previously utilized." Brant's smile tightened fractionally. "Fascinating reframing. though I wonder if the board realizes these new strategies are essentially relabeled versions of existing protocols. They're hardly relabeled, I countered, feeling heat rise in my cheeks despite my determination to remain composed. The core difference, is primarily in presentation rather than substance. Brant interrupted smoothly. Which is fine. Sometimes old ideas need new packaging to feel fresh. I'm just clarifying for everyone's benefit. Several committee members shifted uncomfortably. Doubt had been planted, exactly as Brant intended. Merrick intervened. Let's focus on projected outcomes rather than methodology origins. Ayla, could you elaborate on the retention improvements you anticipate? The meeting continued, but the damage was done. Brant had successfully positioned me as derivative rather than innovative, a critical blow in a company that prided itself on forward thinking. Afterward, as others filed out, Brant lingered. Solid presentation, he said, voice low enough that only I could hear. Very comprehensive. Was there something specific you wanted to add? I asked, gathering my materials. Just this. He leaned closer. You got lucky once. Don't count on it happening again. Before I could respond, he straightened and walked away, exchanging pleasantries with Hamilton at the door. That night, I received another text from the unknown number. First round goes to me. Sleep well, Executive Director. I forwarded the message to Neve with the caption, It's started. Her response came immediately. Need to talk. Not on company devices or premises. Breakfast tomorrow. We met at a small cafe 10 blocks from the office. Neve arrived, looking exhausted, dark circles beneath her eyes. You look like you haven't slept, I observed as she slid into the booth. Been researching. She pulled out her personal tablet. About Brant. There are things you need to know. What she revealed over the next hour changed everything I thought I understood about my situation. Brant's history before Merrick Industries included 2 previous companies where promising female executives had resigned abruptly after conflicts with him. Both women had signed NDAs as part of their separation agreements. How did you find this? I asked, stunned. I have a friend in HR consulting who worked with one of these companies. She couldn't tell me details because of confidentiality, but she confirmed the pattern. Brant identifies female competition, undermines them systematically, then presents himself as the reasonable alternative when they eventually break under the pressure. My coffee grew cold as I processed this. So the executive committee meeting was just his opening move? Nev confirmed. He'll escalate gradually, make you doubt yourself, isolate you from allies, create situations where you appear emotionally unstable or professionally incompetent. I struggled for words. Methodical? Neve supplied. Calculated? Yes, and effective. Neither woman lasted more than 6 months after he targeted them. I pushed my untouched breakfast aside. Why are you telling me this? Why help me? Nev's expression hardened. Because I was at Western Solutions when Brant destroyed Tessa Rivera's career. She was brilliant, the most innovative product developer I'd ever worked with. After she left, I transferred here, only to find Brant had arrived 6 months earlier. The coincidence seemed impossible. And you never said anything? What could I say? I had no proof, just observations. Besides, he was in acquisitions. I was in regional development. Our paths rarely crossed until I was transferred to your department, I finished. The pieces suddenly aligned. That's why you were so quick to help me implement changes. She nodded. I recognized his pattern immediately. The transfer, the impossible expectations, the subtle undermining. But you did something neither Tessa nor the other woman managed. You turned his trap into your advantage. And now he's escalating, I murmured. Exactly. This isn't about the promotion anymore. It's about his reputation, his self-image. He can't allow you to succeed where he failed. I considered this, mind racing through implications. So, what's the play? Go to HR? Merrick? Nev laughed bitterly. With what? Vague texts from an anonymous number? A pattern only visible if you know to look for it? HR won't touch this without concrete evidence. And Merrick? She hesitated. Merrick may support you professionally, but he won't risk company reputation on what amounts to workplace politics. She was right. In the corporate world, Even legitimate complaints were often buried to protect the institution. Without irrefutable evidence, I'd be labeled oversensitive at best, vindictive at worst. So I'm on my own. Not entirely. Neve met my eyes steadily. You have me. And more importantly, you have something Tessa and the other woman didn't. What's that? You know his playbook now. And forewarned is forearmed. Over the following weeks, Brandt's campaign unfolded exactly as Neve had predicted. Projects I initiated faced mysterious delays. Reports I needed arrived incomplete or late. In meetings, my points were questioned with surgical precision, often based on information that should have been confidential. The most damaging incident occurred during my presentation to our largest client. Midway through, their CFO raised concerns about discrepancies in our projected delivery timelines, discrepancies that existed only in the materials they'd somehow received, not in my actual presentation. This is not the timeline we provided, I stated, maintaining composure while internally panicking. It came directly from your office yesterday, the CFO insisted, sliding a document across the table bearing my electronic signature. I recognized immediately what had happened but couldn't say it aloud. Someone had accessed my digital signature and applied it to falsified materials. The meeting dissolved into damage control, with the client departing unsatisfied despite my assurances. Back at the office, I discovered the security footage from the server room had experienced a technical glitch during the time frame when the false documents would have been created. IT could confirm only that someone with executive-level clearance had accessed the system. That evening, alone in my office, I received another text. Clients losing confidence already? Shame. I placed my phone face down on my desk, hands trembling with fury and frustration. This wasn't just professional sabotage. It was personal destruction, meticulously orchestrated to appear as my own incompetence. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Merrick entered without waiting for response. Rough day, he observed, settling into the chair across from me. You could say that. I maintained a neutral expression, uncertain of his purpose. The client situation. Unfortunate misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I corrected. It was deliberate sabotage. Merrick's expression remained impassive. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation. He studied me for a long moment. You're suggesting someone intentionally undermined a 12 million client relationship too. What? Make you look bad? Put that way, it sounded paranoid. Exactly as intended. I'm suggesting, I said carefully, that the document they received was not created by me or anyone on my team, despite bearing my signature. Electronic signatures can be glitchy, Merrick offered. It is investigating. We both knew IT would find nothing conclusive. The sabotage was too professional, too careful. Ayla, Merrick continued, his tone shifting to something gentler. The executive role is demanding. The pressure can be overwhelming. If you need support, I don't need support, I interrupted, recognizing the dangerous direction this conversation was taking. I need security protocols that prevent tampering with official communications. He nodded slowly. Of course. I'll speak with IT about enhancing our safeguards. He rose to leave, then paused. Just between us, some board members have expressed concerns about your transition. This client situation hasn't helped. The warning was clear. I was being watched, and not favorably. After he left, I sat motionless, mind racing. Brandt's strategy was working perfectly. Each incident isolated me further, made me appear less stable, less capable. If this continued, within months I'd be exactly where he wanted me, discredited, doubted, and ultimately dismissed. That night, I made a decision. If Brandt wanted to play this game, I would play it too, but with different rules. He expected me to break under pressure, to become emotional, to make mistakes in my desperation, to prove myself. Instead, I would become the perfect executive, calm, rational, methodical. I would document everything, create redundant backups for all communications, record every interaction. Most importantly, I would give him exactly the target he expected, a woman increasingly paranoid, increasingly isolated. While behind that facade, I would build my case, piece by methodical piece. The next morning, I called Nev to my office and outlined my plan. Her eyes widened as I explained what I intended. "That's incredibly risky," she said when I finished. "If you're wrong about any part of this—" "I'm not wrong." My certainty surprised even me. This is what I've trained for my entire life without realizing it. Analyzing systems, identifying weaknesses, implementing solutions that others don't see coming. He's dangerous, Ayla. Not just professionally. So am I. I met her, concerned gaze steadily. My father didn't just teach me chess. He taught me that when conventional moves fail, you create new ones. Brant expects me to play defense. He won't see this coming. Neve hesitated, then nodded. "What do you need from me?" "Eyes and ears, information, and absolute discretion." "You have it." She rose to leave, then turned back. "Just be careful. People like Brant, they don't have the normal boundaries most of us do." Her warning proved prophetic sooner than either of us anticipated. 3 days later, I received an urgent call from building security at 2 a.m. There had been a break-in at my office. Nothing appeared stolen, but my desk had been searched, drawers left open, files disturbed. The security footage showed only shadows. The cameras had been expertly angled away just before the intrusion. Another technical glitch. Standing in my disheveled office in hastily thrown-on clothes, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. This had crossed from professional sabotage into something more sinister. The invasion of my space carried a message. Nowhere was safe. But as I surveyed the damage, I noticed something the intruder couldn't have known. The files they'd so carefully searched weren't the ones that mattered. The information they sought wasn't kept here at all. For the first time since this battle began, I smiled. A small, private smile of grim satisfaction. Let Brant think he was winning. Let him believe his tactics were working, that I was crumbling under the strain. Let him grow confident, careless. The true game was just beginning. I called an emergency meeting with my closest team members the following morning. Seated in a small conference room with Neve and 2 others I'd come to trust, Jordan from analytics and Dana from client relations, I explained the office break-in without revealing my suspicions about who was behind it. From now on, we operate with complete transparency among ourselves, but absolute discretion with everyone else, I instructed. All sensitive documents are digital only, protected with dual authentication, and backed up to our private server. "You think someone's deliberately targeting you?" Jordan asked, his usually relaxed demeanor tense. "I know they are. I met each of their eyes. And they're not just after me. They're after this team's success, which means they're after your success too." For the next 2 weeks, I maintained a careful balancing act. Publicly, I appeared increasingly stressed, working late, looking tired in meetings, reacting with barely concealed frustration to the accidents that continued to plague my projects. Privately, I was building an invisible network of information and evidence. Neve became my eyes and ears among the mid-level employees, where gossip flowed more freely. Jordan discreetly monitored digital traffic patterns, identifying suspicious access to my team's files without triggering IT security alerts. Dana, with her warm personality and genuine interest in people, cultivated relationships with executive assistants, the true gatekeepers of corporate information. Meanwhile, Brant's confidence grew visibly. In meetings, his challenges became more direct, his helpful suggestions more condescending. Twice, he arrived unannounced at client meetings I was conducting, offering to clarify points I'd supposedly misrepresented. The most damaging incident came during the quarterly finance review. As I presented my department's numbers, Weston interrupted with a question about discrepancies between my reported client retention rates and the financial outcomes. "According to these figures," he said, sliding a document forward, "3 major clients have reduced their service packages in the past month, yet your retention report shows no change in status." The entire room turned to me. I felt the trap closing. I hadn't been informed of any service reductions. "May I see that report?" I asked, maintaining composure while my mind raced. The document he provided showed clear reductions in 3 client accounts my team managed. "I wasn't made aware of these changes," I admitted, scanning the figures. "I'll need to investigate immediately." Curious, Brant interjected from across the table. The account managers report directly to you, don't they? Strange they wouldn't inform you of million-dollar reductions. The implication hung in the air. Either I was lying, or I had completely lost control of my department. Very strange indeed, I agreed, meeting his gaze directly, almost as if someone had instructed them to bypass normal reporting channels. A flicker of something, surprise, concern, crossed Brant's face before his expression smoothed back to polite interest. After the meeting, I immediately called the account managers responsible for those clients. All three told identical stories. They'd received emails, apparently from me, instructing them to process the reductions but delay reporting until after the quarterly review to avoid unnecessary concern. The emails had come from my account but weren't written in my usual style. Some they'd noticed but hadn't questioned given the apparent urgency. I requested copies of these emails, only to discover they'd been permanently deleted from the system. Not just archived, but completely erased. Someone with high-level IT access had covered their tracks. When I reported this to Merrick, his response was measured but troubling. Isla, I want to believe someone is interfering with your work, but these explanations are becoming increasingly elaborate. He chose his words carefully. The board is concerned about the pattern emerging. First, the client presentation. Now these financial discrepancies. These aren't discrepancies. They're fabrications, I insisted. Someone accessed my email account, sent fraudulent instructions, then deleted the evidence. Merrick sighed. Do you hear how that sounds? Like someone's gaslighting me? I finished. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. His expression shifted to one of concern. I'm going to suggest something, and I want you to consider it without immediately rejecting it. Maybe you should take some time off, a few weeks to decompress. The transition to executive level is stressful, and sometimes, I don't need time off, I interrupted, struggling to keep my voice level. I need support against what's clearly targeted sabotage. If you can provide concrete evidence, I'll act immediately, Merrick promised. But without it, my hands are tied. As I left his office, I spotted Brant waiting nearby, ostensibly reviewing documents on his tablet. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Rough meeting? He asked with manufactured sympathy. Nothing I can't handle, I replied coolly. Of course, he agreed. Though if you ever decide the executive pressure is too much, there's no shame in stepping back. I'd be happy to help with the transition, ensure a smooth handover. The naked ambition in his offer should have infuriated me. Instead, it clarified everything. This wasn't just about humiliating me or forcing me out. Brant wanted my position. He'd orchestrated this entire campaign to make me fail so spectacularly that he would be the obvious replacement. That night, I received another text. Ready to discuss terms of your resignation yet? I can ensure it's handled gracefully. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Neve. It's time, I told her. Activate the protocol. The protocol, as we'd codenamed it, was the countermeasure I'd been quietly building since the office break-in. For weeks, Jordan had been running a parallel shadow system that logged all access to my official accounts, capturing activity invisible to the company's regular monitoring. Dana had been having casual coffees with assistants throughout the executive floor, building a timeline of Brant's movements and meetings. Nev had created a secure repository of all communications, duplicating everything in real time to a server that couldn't be accessed from within the company network. Most importantly, I'd been feeding Brant exactly what he wanted, the appearance of a woman cracking under pressure, making small mistakes, becoming increasingly paranoid, all while laying a trap he wouldn't see until it was too late. The next morning, I requested a meeting with the entire executive committee, including board members, for the following day. The topic, departmental security and performance review. Merrick approved it with visible reluctance, warning me privately that this needed to be substantive, not speculative. That afternoon, Brant stopped by my office, leaning against the doorframe with casual confidence. Heard about your big meeting tomorrow, he remarked. Bold move. I thought it was time to address concerns directly, I replied, pretending to focus on my screen. Admirable. though sometimes admitting defeat is the more graceful option. He studied me with what might have passed for genuine concern if I hadn't known better. The strain is showing, Ayla. Everyone sees it. I looked up, allowing him to see exactly what I wanted him to see: exhaustion, frustration, barely contained anger. I appreciate your concern. It's not too late to control the narrative, he continued. A voluntary step back now would preserve your professional reputation. Push this further, he shrugged eloquently. Well, recovery becomes more difficult. I'll keep that in mind. After he left, I sent a company-wide email announcing I'd be working remotely for the rest of the day to prepare for tomorrow's presentation. It was the signal to my team: implement the final phase. That evening, Neve called to confirm everything was in place. Are you sure about this? She asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything, I told her. He's overplayed his hand. Tomorrow, we finish this. I slept surprisingly well that night, waking with the clear-headed focus I'd always experienced before major presentations. I chose my outfit carefully, a charcoal gray suit that projected authority without flashiness, paired with the vintage watch my father had given me when I completed my MBA. For timing your moves perfectly, he'd said. The boardroom was full when I arrived, exactly 3 minutes before the scheduled start. Brant sat near the head of the table, looking relaxed and slightly amused. Hamilton and Weston wore expressions of thinly veiled impatience. Merrick nodded to me, his eyes communicating a clear warning. Make this good. I connected my laptop to the presentation system, aware of every eye on me. The room quieted as I stood. Thank you all for making time for this meeting, I began. Over the past months, there have been concerns about my department's performance and my leadership. Today, I want to address those concerns comprehensively. I clicked to the first slide, a simple timeline showing my department's client retention metrics since I'd taken over. As you can see, despite recent reports to the contrary, our actual retention rate has improved by 22% quarter over quarter. The apparent discrepancies reported last week were based on fraudulent reductions processed without client authorization. Weston frowned. That's a serious accusation. It is, I agreed calmly, which is why I've spent the past month gathering evidence. I clicked to the next slide. This is a log of access to my email account over the past 6 weeks. The highlighted entries show access from devices not registered to me during times when server records confirm I was logged in elsewhere. The room shifted uncomfortably as I continued through my presentation, methodically laying out evidence of systematic sabotage: the falsified client materials, the deleted emails, the manipulated financial reports, all presented not with emotional accusations but with forensic precision. The question, I said, approaching my conclusion, isn't whether sabotage occurred. The evidence makes that undeniable. The question is who had both the access and motivation to orchestrate it. I clicked to a final slide showing a comprehensive timeline correlating the sabotage incidents with server access logs, building security records, and calendar appointments. Only one person had the necessary access, technical knowledge, and motive, I stated, turning to face the room directly. The same person who has a documented history of similar behavior at Western Solutions and Archer Dynamics. The room went utterly silent. Brant's expression hadn't changed, but a muscle twitched near his jaw. Isla, Merrick said carefully, are you directly accusing Brant Pierce of corporate sabotage? I'm presenting evidence, I corrected. The conclusion seems obvious, but I'm sure the board will want to conduct its own investigation. I paused, then added, particularly given the potential legal implications for the company if clients discover their accounts were manipulated without authorization. The threat wasn't subtle. If this became public, the company would face not just embarrassment but potentially significant legal liability. Brant finally spoke, his voice controlled but tight. This is absurd. You've constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory because you couldn't handle the executive role. He turned to the board members. She's been increasingly paranoid for weeks. Everyone has noticed. Paranoia implies unfounded fear, I replied evenly. The evidence suggests my concerns were entirely justified. Evidence that could easily have been manufactured, Brant countered, just as you claim I manufactured evidence against you. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. The final trap. That's a reasonable doubt to raise, I acknowledged, which is why I haven't relied solely on digital evidence that could potentially be manipulated. I removed a small device from my pocket. For the past month, on the advice of corporate security following the break-in at my office, I've recorded all my professional conversations. Brant's composure slipped for the first time. That's illegal in this state without consent. Actually, it's not, I corrected. This is a single-party consent state for recordings, but your knowledge of wiretapping law is interesting. I pressed play, and Brant's voice filled the room. The strain is showing, Ayla. Everyone sees it. A voluntary step back now would preserve your professional reputation. Push this further. Well, recovery becomes more difficult. That proves nothing, Brant said dismissively, though his face had paled slightly. Agreed, I replied, which is why I have this. I pressed play again, and another recording began. Brant speaking to someone else. Just make sure the numbers show significant client losses before her presentation. Nothing traceable. Yes, exactly like before. By the time she figures it out, the damage will be done. The board's already questioning her stability. No, Merrick won't protect her. He can't afford another public relations problem after last year. 3 more weeks of this, and they'll be begging me to step in. As the recording played, Brant's expression transformed from confidence to shock to cold fury. When it ended, the silence in the room was absolute. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, voice barely controlled. "You should be more careful about where you have sensitive conversations," I replied. "Corner offices have surprisingly thin walls." The truth, which I didn't share, was that he'd had the conversation in what he thought was the privacy of his office, not realizing that the renovation 2 months earlier had included installation of a new HVAC system with vents that carried sound between adjacent offices. Nev, whose office shared that vent system, had captured the conversation on her phone when she recognized his voice discussing me. Merrick was the first to recover from the stunned silence. "Brant, do you have any response to this recording?" Brant's eyes never left mine. "It's obviously edited, manufactured. She's been planning this setup for weeks." Again, a reasonable concern, I acknowledged, which is why I've provided the original recordings to our legal department for authentication. They can confirm no editing has occurred. "This is ridiculous," Brant snapped, looking around the table for support. "Are you really going to take her word over mine based on some recordings that could easily be manipulated?" The desperation in his voice was becoming evident. Hamilton and Weston exchanged uncomfortable glances. "There's an easy way to resolve this," I suggested. "A forensic examination of the server access logs, email records, and financial transactions in question. If I've manipulated evidence, that will be discoverable. If you've been accessing my accounts and falsifying documents, that will be equally clear. If I've manipulated evidence," Brant stood abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and be accused." "Sit down, Brant," Merrick ordered, his voice sharp. "You absolutely do have to sit here. This is now an official corporate investigation." The meeting continued for another 2 hours as I methodically presented each piece of evidence. Throughout, Brant's demeanor shifted from outrage to calculating to increasingly desperate. By the end, even Hamilton and Weston were viewing him with barely concealed disgust. When I finally concluded, Merrick asked Brant to leave the room while the committee discussed next steps. As he passed my chair, Brant leaned down and whispered, "This isn't over." I smiled slightly. "Actually, it is." After he left, Merrick turned to me. "You've been gathering this evidence for weeks. Why wait until now to present it?" "I needed to be certain," I replied, "and I needed enough evidence that there could be no doubt, no way to dismiss it as paranoia or misunderstanding." "You could have come to me earlier," he said, a note of hurt in his voice. "With respect, sir, I tried, but without concrete evidence, it was my word against his, and he's had years to build his reputation and relationships here." Merrick couldn't deny the truth of this. "What do you want to happen now?" "That's not my decision," I answered carefully. "But I would suggest the company consider how this reflects on its culture and oversight mechanisms. This happened not just because one person acted unethically, but because our systems allowed it to happen." The meeting adjourned with a decision to place Brant on immediate administrative leave, pending a full investigation. As people filed out, several committee members stopped to speak with me privately, some offering apologies for doubting me, others expressing admiration for my methodical approach to uncovering the truth. Merrick was the last to leave. "You'll have my full support implementing whatever changes you deem necessary to prevent this from happening again," he promised. And Isla, I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. Alone in the boardroom, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just occurred. The weeks of stress, of constant vigilance, of being gaslit and undermined, it crashed over me in a wave that left me momentarily lightheaded. My phone buzzed with a text from Neve. "Well?" I replied simply, "It's done." 3 weeks later, I stood before the company's senior leadership team, presenting my department's quarterly results. The room felt different, more engaged, more respectful. The investigation into Brandt's activities had been thorough and damning, revealing not just his campaign against me, but similar patterns with other colleagues. He had been terminated for cause, with legal action pending for the client account manipulations. As I concluded my presentation, Merrick stood. "Before we adjourn, I have an announcement. Following recent events, the board has recognized the need for stronger oversight of our corporate culture and ethics. We're creating a new position, Chief Integrity Officer, to implement systematic protections against the kind of behavior we recently experienced." He turned to me. "Ayla, we'd like to offer you this position, in addition to your current role, with a corresponding compensation adjustment. No one has demonstrated a stronger commitment to integrity in the face of adversity." The irony wasn't lost on me. Brandt's attempts to destroy my career had instead elevated it to a level he could never have reached. That evening, as I packed up my office, preparing for my move to a larger space on the executive floor, a familiar figure appeared in my doorway. Neve leaned against the frame, smiling. "Chief Integrity Officer Frost. Has a nice ring to it." "Along with a nice salary bump," I added, returning her smile. "One I intend to share with the team that made it possible." "You earned this," she said seriously. "Not just by beating Brandt, but by doing it the right way, with evidence, with precision, with integrity. Justice is sweeter when it's incontrovertible." I agreed. As we walked out together, I glanced back at my office, the space where I'd been cornered, threatened, gaslighted, the space where I'd refused to break. My father would have recognized the chess move I'd executed, sacrificing a parent position to create an irresistible trap. Let your opponent believe they're winning until the moment they realize they've lost completely. The following week, I received one final text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I forwarded it to our security team, who added it to the growing file of evidence against Brandt. His legal problems were mounting, not just with our company, but with previous employers, whose NDAs no longer seemed to be holding. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's simply exposing who they truly are and letting natural consequences unfold. Brandt had built his career on undermining others and taking credit for their work. Now, that same pattern had become his undoing. 6 months later, I stood at a podium, accepting an industry award for corporate ethics, innovations, programs I'd developed based directly on my experience. As I surveyed the room of business leaders, I couldn't help but think of how differently this might have ended if I'd reacted emotionally rather than strategically. "The greatest test of leadership," I told the audience, "isn't how you behave when things are going well. It's how you respond when faced with systematic opposition. Do you break? Do you compromise your integrity? Or do you find a way to transform obstacle into opportunity?" I never mentioned Brandt by name in my speech. I didn't need to. His story had become a cautionary tale throughout the industry, the brilliant executive whose career imploded when his methods were exposed. The true victory wasn't just in keeping my position or even in advancing. It was in changing the system itself, creating structures that would prevent others from experiencing what I had endured. As I often tell young professionals who ask about my journey, sometimes winning isn't about defeating your opponent. It's about transforming the entire game. If you've ever faced workplace sabotage or been undermined by a colleague who couldn't stand to see you succeed, I hope this story gives you strength. Remember that documentation is your ally, patience is your strategy, and integrity is your ultimate weapon. Like this video if you found value in Ayla's journey, comment with your own experiences of workplace challenges, and subscribe for more stories of professional resilience and strategic thinking. Together, we can create workplaces where success is based on merit, not manipulation.